first thing we need to do is to elect the chair for this particular session of the Licensing Committee so that we can continue.
I nominate Councillor Root.
Councillor Bell, you're on mute.
I'd like to second that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. In that case, I will be chairing this session of the Licensing Subcommittee. I believe that the applicant and their agent and all the registered parties will have been sent the papers already for this session. So if we follow the order of business in the agenda, I believe the next item is apologies for absence. And looking at everybody who's here, I don't believe that anybody is absent. Is that correct? Good. Okay. No absences. Good. It's a good start. And now I need to ask Councillor Bell and Councillor Snell whether or not they have any declarations of interest that they need to declare. Neither of them do. Good. Thank you. We've got a couple of minutes from previous meetings which need to be approved before we move further. So first of all, if I can ask for the minutes of the meeting from the 15th of June, if they could be approved. And I believe all three of us were sitting that day. So we're in a good place to make sure that they are accurate. And I've looked at them and I was happy with them. Were the two of you happy with them as well?
Agreed.
Agreed. Yeah.
Thank you. And then the following one was on the 6th of July, the meeting from the 6th of July, when I believe both Councillor Snell and Councillor Bell were on that panel. Is that correct?
Correct.
And are those minutes okay with you?
Yes.
Agreed.
Good. Thank you very much. In that case, we'll just run through the licensing subcommittee hearing procedures at this point then. So if I can just explain that what we will do is to introduce ourselves in a moment, and then, well, perhaps we'll do that now, shall we? Shall we introduce ourselves now? I'm Councillor Penny Root. I'm obviously going to be chairing this session, and I am a councillor for Victoria Ward. If I could ask Councillor Bell.
I'm Councillor Brian Bell from Brownswood Ward.
And I'm Councillor Peter Snell from Dalston Ward.
Okay. And the applicant and his representative may be wondering who some of the other people are here. So Amanda, if I could ask you to explain who you are.
Yes, I'm Amanda North from Legal Services, assisting members today at the hearing. Thank you.
And Natalie?
I am Natalie Williams from Governance Services.
And Channing?
I'm Channing Riviere from Licensing Service.
And Suba?
I'm Subhashri Ramana, a Principal Licensing Officer from the Licensing Service.
And Mario, who's very shy because he hasn't got his camera on.
Hi, I'm Mario from ICT.
And Mario, basically, because this session is being recorded and streamed, he's basically the technical person who makes sure that we don't fall off air. Unlike Facebook, Insta, etc., yesterday. Good. Okay, so now, and we've already heard that Mr. Zokkachi is the applicant and Mr. Pinar is the representative for the applicant. Is that correct for what we're about to hear? So what we'll do is we will go through the invite the applicant first of all to. Sorry, we won't do that. I don't have this written down in front of me, so I'm doing this from memory. So Amanda or Suba, do feel free to interrupt if I've got it wrong. Suba will first of all introduce what the item is that we're going to be looking at. Amanda, have I got it wrong already?
Sorry, you were just about to go through the hearing procedure first before Suba makes her presentation.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah, sorry, I'm just making a slight hash of it.
No, you're fine. Thank you. It's just the hearing procedure, then Suba can make her presentation.
Yeah, as I say, I don't have the hearing procedure written down in front of me, so I'm doing it from memory.
Do you want me to go through
sorry,
it?
Chair, if you follow the brief that I've given you, that will sets everything out.
Let me have
That's
a quick
been
look
sent
at
to
that brief.
members.
Do you want to help her out, Natalie, or do you want me to do it quickly?
Amanda,
Well,
I'll go through. I'll quickly go through it, but it may be on the hearing procedure. So first of all, we've the first step we've carried out in the hearing procedure, which is in the pack of papers. It says step 1, appointment of the chair and introduction. We've done that. Step 2, the licensing officer will present the case, the report. Step 3, the applicant will present their case. So the applicant's representative will make the presentation then. Step 4, the responsible authorities will make their case, and that's when the licensing service will do that. Step 5, we have no other person, so we won't need to be dealing with that. And then the next step will be a discussion following the presentations. And then step 7 is closing remarks. Step 8, final clarification, and then the members will then close the meeting. The chair will close the meeting, and members will retire to make their decision. And the decision will be given in summary a day after the hearing, and within 5 working days after the actual hearing.
thank you very much, Amanda. Apologies, everybody. This is partly the problem with remote working, where there are only so many screens that I can kind of juggle at the same time and still see everybody. So I guess I should ask, first of all, Mrs. Zotkachi and Mr. Burke-Pinar, whether or not that's clear to you, what we're going to be doing. Have you got any questions about the procedures at all?
Yes, it is clear.
It is clear. Good. Okay. In that case,
Yes.
at this point, we can begin the hearing then. And Suba, I wonder if you could outline what we're going to be considering today, please.
Thank you, Chair. Licensing service are a receipt of an application for a premises license under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 for Mediachi 505 Kingsland Road for recorded music to authorize supply of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises, as stated in the agenda. Representation remains from the licensing. Also, I would like to clarify that there is a minor error within the report. The premises is located in De Beauvieu Ward, not in Dalston. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So at this point, I think we can invite the applicant to tell us about their application, please. Mr. Burke-Pinar?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. As stated in the application, we taken all the necessary measures to make sure that we comply with the 4 license objectives and keep to working there. I mean, with staff being trained and age verification has been implemented and relevant signs has been put up. And also we got CCTV in place. I have spoken to Mr. Tuit, who made the representation once this was forwarded to me by the relevant department. He said to me that if I convince him that the applicant can demonstrate that they will not add anything else to special policy area in the location of the premises, and he's got no problem with it, which I send him an email stating that the applicant does demonstrate all these relevant qualities and personality and training. And unfortunately, I've spoken to him twice on 2 occasions. He said he's going to get back to me, but he hasn't, and then this is where we are. I was hoping that he's going to withdraw his representation, but I believe that he hasn't.
Okay, perhaps I can help a little bit in that respect. Having looked at the application, I think personally it seems to me a little bit sparse. There is not very much information about the nature of the business which you're intending to run there. And normally we would anticipate seeing more information about the nature of the business, how you're intending to run it, etc., etc. So it's not just a tick box exercise for you to meet all of the different things in terms of have you got the CCTV and what have you there. We would expect those things anyway, obviously, but we really don't understand very much about the sort of business that you're planning to be running there. So we need an explanation about that, I think, first, and also something about the capacity of the business. We've seen the plan and it looks like it's probably quite small. So if you could perhaps talk us through how the business is going to work. That would be useful.
Okay, the capacity of the premise is about 10 or 12 people that can sit. I don't know whether they managed to provide seating area yet. Last time I was there, they didn't have any, and they were planning to have in the future though. The food they provide is very unique food. It's mussel, stuffed mussel, and it's very popular in Mediterranean and Middle East, which is healthy food as well. And they recently been opening, and they're becoming really popular and very good area. And they not intend to serve alcohol alone, as long as it's with the table food. That's their intention, and I think I state that in the application as well. So it's going to be. Sorry.
Can I ask about takeaways, because it's pretty small establishment if it's just 10 to 12 seated people.
Mm-hmm.
So is it largely then a takeaway establishment?
Well, I can say right now it's 99% is takeaway.
99%.
Yes, because they don't have a seating area. Usually people stand there and eat. If there's any, they've got 2 tables and 2 stools there. But I've been told that they're trying to put a cushion or seat for customers to sit down and consume there.
Okay, so if I can then perhaps just explain part of the issues with regard to the special policy area. As you know, in applying for a license in a special policy area, you have to show that you're not going to contribute to any of the cumulative negative impacts of having a licensed premises in this area, which is an SPA already. From the size of the premises that you're talking about and the fact that it is largely takeaway, the kinds of issues that are presented to us may be slightly different. So, for example, we've got issues around things like how many people might be queuing, how much noise there might be outside the premises as well as inside. Whether or not Uber people will be coming to, or Deliveroo will be coming to pick up takeaways and take them away, this kind of thing, and whether or not this is going to contribute to the overall negative impact on in the area. So I wonder if you can talk us through some of that, please.
Okay, all delivery drivers or delivery drivers, because there's no parking allowed in front of the shop, they have to park their vehicles on the side road, which is a minute or 2 minutes walk from the premises. And there has been a sign, ready to put up on the window in relevant places to make sure that noise is being kept at limited level, to make sure that no residents or other people, public, is not being disturbed. We apply for music as well, but that's just a background music to make sure that we have some sort of music, music there, not too loud, just enough so people can hear it. And queuing, most of the people that queue, they queue within the premises. They don't really go out of the premises.
Chair, I suggest
yes,
at this point are supposed to be for clarification. And I think before we get into the discussion, it'd be good to hear from the licensing officer, and then we can pick these points up in discussion. But we're not, let's hear what Channing has to say first.
Okay, now that sounds reasonable. I was just trying to understand a little bit more about the nature of the business, really, before we went on. Councillor Bell, are you happy with that? Shall we move on to hear what the responsible authorities have to say? Good. So in that case, bear with us and we'll come back to discuss this in a bit more detail later. Mr. Riviere, if you wouldn't mind telling us the situation from your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the representation that my colleague Mr. Tuitt has submitted is, as you've pointed out, based on the fact that the premises is located in the special policy area. So what's been put in the submission by Mr. Tuitt is that the applicant has not really demonstrated in the application what steps or measures that they would take to not add to the cumulative impact. So even at this early stage, we're still finding out sort of the nature of the business and the nature of the activity. And where they've already suggested that there's no parking, even though deliveries will be taking place, it raises some further concerns about how these drivers would be measured, controlled, and what measures would be put in place to minimize any nuisance to local residents. Because the area is a special policy area, because local residents already experience the impact of so many licensed premises in the area, the negative aspect of it. So, there needs to be a bit more detail and a bit more clarification as to how they will not add to the cumulative impact, which is what has not been set out in the application.
Councillor Snell?
Okay, so Mr. Rivera, can you just confirm to me, I'm looking through the conditions here, and the sort of conditions we might normally expect would be a limit on people outside. I see there's a limit of 2 smokers, but by the sound of it, quite a few here in this business. I can't see anything limiting the sale of alcohol.
Councillor Snell, you're fading quite a lot. I don't know if your microphone is near to you.
It's normally okay. I'll make sure I just speak straight at it.
That's better.
So the 3 things I'm looking for and can't see is, number 1, the control of people queuing for food on the street or eating food on the street. Number 2, I can't see a condition limiting alcohol sales to a substantial meal. And number 3, I can't see a condition stating the nature of any off sales. Am I missing something? If those are there, please tell me where they are.
Chair, I can't see them on there, but the applicant was asked to make further submissions. So I haven't seen those submissions, but if they've made further submissions that maybe offer those as conditions, then I'm not aware of them.
Chair, as far as I'm aware, the ancillary conditions are recommended in the report and appear to have been accepted by the applicant.
Suba, you wanted to say something. Was it
I think
to
the
point
police
that
have
out?
offered conditions which...
Yeah. So within the report, there are conditioned 17, 18, and 21 in related to the off sales substantial table meal conditions. On the online version, it's on page 6 and 7 of the report.
Thank you. I should have read this more carefully. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So we have, if we look at 17, 18, 19, we've got the 2 smokers condition outside, off sales to be in a sealed container, and supply of alcohol for consumption on the premises to be to seated customers only, and ancillary to a substantial meal. Does that satisfy you, Councillor Snell, in terms of what you were looking for?
Yes, I'm happy to discuss this in the discussion phase. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to say at this stage, or shall we move straight on to the discussion, which we're sort of halfway into anyway, aren't we? So, good. In that case, perhaps I could pick up and talk about this business of people being outside, first of all. I mean, obviously, in an area like this, a lot of the issues around disturbance are actually what take place outside of premises, as well as what's actually happening inside. We're talking about an area where it's a residential area, and so having large numbers of people outside is a significant issue and potentially could add to cumulative impact. So I wonder whether or not the applicant has considered that and has thought about how they may deal with that issue of people gathering outside. Perhaps actually I can ask a clarification question as well, if you wouldn't mind, which is that Mr. Burpinar, you implied that this business is already working and is already serving food on a 99% takeaway basis. So perhaps you could describe how that is functioning at the moment as well.
So far, so good. They're very popular. I mean, they are the food they provide is, as I said, it's very unique food. It's street food in Turkey and Middle East area, Mediterranean area. It's very popular. It goes really well with wine or beer, and this is they've been suggested by some of the customers to have a seating area where they can have a beer with, and consume their food. And this is why they asked me to prepare an application for them, which I submitted. And in terms of queue, I mean, the place is large enough to have 3 or 4 people in queuing up at least. I mean, I haven't seen more than 3 people so far since they opened. And I don't think there's going to be any impact or in terms of noise or anything, because they within the premises, then they're quite they don't make much noise. And I mean, there is nothing to add the noise already with their operation.
So you're saying that? Can I just ask, how long has the business been running like this?
I think 3 or 4 months now.
Okay. Councillor Bell and Councillor Snell, have you got questions to put? Amanda.
Just going back to the capacity, have they done a fire risk assessment or that helped confirm these numbers that they were talking about?
I'm not too sure about that. Shall I get back to you on this? Or Mr. Zotkaci can answer this if you can.
If you can address it now, yes. If you can check your papers now.
I don't think there's any in right now, but we can arrange that and then email it to you as soon as possible.
So you haven't had the fire risk assessment?
I don't think that. To best of my knowledge, I haven't seen any risk assessment in but I don't know. Mr. Zotkaci has prepared it. I can ask him if he can hear me now. Ahmed?
Hello, hi.
Hello.
We don't have it at the moment, but we can speak with someone to have it if it's necessary to.
Well, I think that we would have to have Councillor Snell.
Sorry, yes, I'm having trouble with my screen. It's gone a bit unstable on me, so I hope I can continue to participate, and I'm going to leave the mute off for a while. The conditions from the police do seem very well written about the proper permission of alcohol. The thing that slightly worries me is how it's going to be enforced, because it looks to me as if it'd be very easy for someone to get take away mussels and alcohol on the premises and just go around the corner and drink them. There's various places. I mean, Dalston Square is very close. Various places very close. So how are you going to stop people? I'm worried about the enforceability of the conditions that the police have asked you to include. So how exactly is that going to be enforced?
You're on mute at the moment, Mr. Birkman.
Councillor Snell, even though this food is originated from the street, Mediterranean, it's not very easy food that you can consume on the street, sir. You have to use your both hands, and it's very sticky. It's juicy. You have to use lemon, and it's not that something that you can consume. You gotta either take it home or you have to consume on the premises. Regards to police, police have contacted me regarding this application, and which I agreed with them. They said, even though you apply for 11 o'clock, could you reduce to 10:30 so people can have half an hour to finish off their drink and then get a cab or walk home, which we agreed. That's the only time police have contacted us, which we addressed their concern.
Okay, well, we were told the conditions I referred to had come from the police, so they've obviously submitted conditions to us, which is why they withdrew their objection. But can I just confirm also, in terms of the hours, you're pretty close to standing hours. Would you reduce the hours by a further half hour on a Sunday night? Because at the moment, you've got the opening hours till 11 o'clock and standing hours would be 10:30 on a Sunday night. Are you saying you would agree with that?
I don't think Mr. Ahmed will disagree with that, sir.
will not disagree with it. Okay, thank you. And I'll just make the point, because I don't know if it's come across strongly enough. If you're in a special policy area, what you have to convince us is this will not contribute to extra problems out on the street, what we call cumulative impact. And that can be alcohol, that can be littering, that can be anything that causes a public nuisance. And that's what you have to convince us. The burden of the proof is on you. You don't have any automatic right to get a license. Can I just check with Channing? Are you happy that the conditions that the police have proposed would stop public nuisance on the street? It does seem to me there's very little protection for the cumulative impact concerns.
Chair, from what they've proposed, it seems mainly to do with the supply of alcohol and not really much to do with outside on the street sort of immediately. So I'm not sure what capacity or how much people would sit outside the premises if there's an external area. And a further concern would be, I know they mentioned about deliveries and the driver stopping around the corner, but are there any conditions or measures, what management steps do they have in place to control these delivery drivers, etc.? And for example, if there's a large crowd of people, or is there a maximum number of people that, even though you've talked about the capacity, is there a maximum amount of people that would be in the external area at one time, using it to eat and drink, etc.? So those are the kind of things that I think haven't really been addressed in the application with regards to the impact on the street.
It is absolutely the case in this area that we have a major problem with delivery drivers. People in Dalston Square complain about it. Ashwin Street complain about it. So we really, it does worry me. What will you be doing as the applicant to minimise the nuisance caused by those delivery drivers?
So the premise is located we have a bus stop in front of premises, and there's always people waiting for bus there. I mean, the operation of the premises will not add anything much more to that. In terms of delivery drivers, I don't know what proportion of the turnover come from deliveries, but I believe that they are start doing deliveries on Uber, Just Eat, and all that. And all those companies are multinational and they have their own measures in place. And we can add more measures in terms of parking, riding slowly, parking sensibly, to make sure that they are not disturbing anyone else around residential. Bear in mind, we close at 11 anyway. I mean, there is not much more. If there's anything else, any suggestions, we are open to comply with all these regulations. I mean, if there is any, we need to introduce new measures to make sure that those activities will not add anything negatively on the public or the legislations. We are happy to comply with it.
Sorry, I was going to say, could I also ask about the time of day when you receive deliveries as well, because that can also be an issue as well. So I'm talking about when you get your supplies in.
Okay, I'll let Mr. Ahmed answer that, please.
Is that the question about delivery, Uber Eats, and Just Eat?
No, your supply, your food.
We bring it in the afternoon usually.
Okay. So in terms of noise nuisance, that's unlikely to be an issue.
Yes, correct. And I also want to mention about the Just Eat delivery and Uber Eats drivers. We don't take that much orders on those platforms. We have our own mobile application, and we deliver the orders ourselves. Yeah, that's why the other platforms' proportion is very low. That's what I want to mention.
Okay, that's exactly the sort of commitment that we tend to be getting nowadays, because delivery drivers are such a cause of nuisance. If I look at the map, what would worry me is that everyone would park in Stamford Street, although it's supposed to be cycle access only. that's exactly the same as is true of Ashwin Street, and they just ignore it. They just drive down there at high speed, and they're a danger to people. And I know there's been problems with scooters on that street anyway. So would you be happy to accept a condition that said delivery would be through your own platform only, because then you can control it. You could insist they use electric vehicles. You could insist that they use, you could control the amount of noise they made. So would it be acceptable for us to have a condition limiting delivery to people booked through your own platform?
I need to discuss with my business partner. But as I said, the proportion of orders on other platforms, such as Just Eat, Delivery, and Uber, is very low, and they usually come with a bike. They don't use motorcycle usually, because we only take orders on those platforms in a mile, not longer than that. I mean, more far than that.
The problem that we have, you see, is that that may be the case at the moment. But if you decide that you're going to stop employing your own delivery person, obviously that would change. And unless we can write something into the license conditions which specify that you will have your own deliveries, there's nothing to stop you in a few months' time swapping over to using Uber Eats primarily. And with that, the associated additional noise and disturbance. You understand?
I understand, but the drivers don't make really that much noise when they come. There is a motorcycle parking slots just on the Stamford Road behind the shop. They just park there, and we usually already prepare the orders before they come. They don't even come inside. We just give them the bag and they go away, because we don't keep them wait. Our food is pre-cooked, so we prepare it and give it straight away. We don't keep them wait in front of the door or inside the shop.
Okay. Have you got any other questions, Councillor Bell or Councillor Snell, with regard to this? I mean, one of the things that I'm just wondering is, since we're having this hearing today, it would obviously make a difference to us if we were in a position to be able to decide whether or not this is a condition that you could live with, to have your own app and your own delivery drivers as the primary delivery outlet. Mr. Burke-Pennar, what did you want to say?
Councillor Roth, as you know, that globally we're suffering from this COVID-19 thing, and a lot of people just trying to survive after these restrictions. And this is a new business, and it's very difficult to, I mean, a lot of food businesses rely on all those delivery platforms. I mean, put in a condition, say that you're not going to use these platforms to rely on your own system, it may affect their turnover. This, as I said, this is a new business. They provide a job. They're trying to earn a decent earning. But I suggest that, I mean, they are keeping that minimum already. I mean, we can put in a condition may affect their survival to not to use delivery platforms.
I understand what you're saying, but on the other hand, it is our job to ensure that as a result of giving this license, there isn't an increase in antisocial behaviour and noise nuisance, etc., in the area. So we're looking for ways to ensure that that won't be the case. You understand? There is no automatic right to having a license in a special area like this. We have to be absolutely assured in our own minds that we're not going to be adding to the cumulative impact, as we've already outlined to you. So that is one, it's an issue for some concern. And Councillor Snell?
Well, I was going to add, I'm not being reassured so far, I'm afraid, because essentially if the parking spaces are in Stamford Road, then I bet you that half the people are coming out through what's supposed to be a restricted cycle access area. Now, I know because of the scooter place that's down there, because it's come up on planning committee before now, there is already a great deal of concern about the impact on the neighbours of those scooters. I think there's some elderly people's housing at the back. If I was prepared to say you get this license, I think I would not be prepared to do that without some sort of control over the delivery system, because it is a massive, massive problem in the centre of Dalston. The other thing I might add, because I just want to put this in the open and you can address it in your closing comments. When you say we're not sure if the business is viable, that really is not a convincing argument to us on licensing committee, because that tends to create pressures not to follow the licensing conditions, like stay open later and all that sort of thing. It is true that the government has said take special notice of the problems caused by COVID, but when we're making a long-term decision, the business, it might not be viable without this. Well, I'm sorry, that is not a convincing argument to us on licensing committee. Nobody has a right to a license in an area that already has too much impact from licensed premises. That's the legal position, and I'm sure Amanda will correct me if I've got it wrong.
Mr. Burke-Bernard, what would you like to say in response?
I think Councillor Snell has misunderstood me. I didn't say business is not viable. What my statement was, a lot of food businesses rely on delivery platforms, and in this case, this business, even though they take large proportion of their turnover from takeaways, and delivery is an option for them. So I suggest that if you're suggesting any measures, if you have any solutions, we're happy to listen and implement them.
Mr. Riviere, I'm glad you've raised your hand, because my next move was to go to you and ask whether or not you had any suggestions for appropriate conditions that we might be able to impose here.
Well, Chair, what I was going to suggest is, I know the applicant has said that they use their own drivers and they occasionally use other drivers by Uber Eats, etc. So what steps or what measures do they have in place now that they use to control or work with those drivers, and are they something that can be used or formalized into conditions that might be suitable for the applicant?
What sorts of things have you in mind, Mr. Riviere? What sorts of, when you talk about
Hello?
that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, my connection is just getting a bit choppy.
Sorry, perhaps you can give us an example of the sort of thing that you've got in mind.
So, for example, I know they said there's no parking outside the premises. So, is there a specific area where they can park? Do they have rules about not idling engines, etc.? Stuff like that. Like, what steps do they take, like for their own drivers, to make sure there's no nuisance? So, is there a specific place where they stop, where they, make sure they don't create this nuisance by like shouting or talking loudly on the phone, stuff like that to residents? And then, what steps do they use at the minute? Do they come directly into the premises?
So perhaps then we can ask either you, Mr. Burke-Bernard, or Mr. Zokkachi to describe what you do with your delivery drivers at the moment, and how you manage to ensure there isn't antisocial behaviour there at the moment as a result of them.
Ahmed, questions to you.
I was raising my hand. Sorry. We don't employ any drivers in payroll. For example, if I'm in the shop, if we take orders on the app, I deliver myself. We don't have extra drivers for it. And I already applied for parking space on Stamford Road to the Islington Council.
And have you got that parking space or not?
Not yet, but
Okay.
I am paying for it when I park my car at the moment.
Okay. Councillor Snell?
I realised that actually there's a fairly obvious solution here, because what the council is trying to do in the area is to relocate any delivery drivers on Bentley Road car park, which of course is immediately to the back of the premises. So the idea that that is used for any waiting delivery drivers, I think we could very fittingly add a condition. If that doesn't go ahead, because that's the council's preferred position, then obviously the applicant can come back with a variation. But what the council is trying to do is encourage all delivery drivers in the area to use a special designated area in Bentley Road. And what they are saying to the drivers who take stuff from McDonald's is they will not enforce for people just stopping to pick up. So that would seem to me a perfectly acceptable solution, and then would not be unduly punitive. So that's what I would propose.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. That's one of the advantages of having somebody with some good local knowledge, isn't it? Thank you. I wonder then if we can put that to the applicant, whether or not you would be willing to allow us to include a condition which says that your delivery drivers will use the designated area in the Bentley Road car park.
As I said, we don't employ any additional drivers at the moment, but if we do, yes, it's okay for us. They can park on Bentley car park.
And I think we'd probably want to go further than that and to say that any external drivers would also be advised that that is the designated parking area for pickups from your shop. So that would mean Uber Eats, Just Eat, etc., would also be required to use Bentley Road as their parking area.
Bentley Road is at least 3 minutes away from our shop, so I'm not sure if we can manage to pick up from there.
Sorry, to make it quite clear, my understanding is that the enforcement staff on the council have made it clear they will not enforce people driving up to McDonald's is the main place, McDonald's collecting stuff and driving away again. This is long-term parking, so we can write the condition in that format. So it won't stop people just driving up to the shop and picking up. It will stop people congregating and then creating noise and upsetting the neighbours.
So you're saying then, Councillor Snell, that it would. Now I'm a bit confused. Sorry, could you clarify that for me? So who would be able to drive up to the shop, because there's no parking in front of the shop. There's only parking at the side.
My understanding is that they can just park in by the curb, you know, just to go in and collect and leave. I mean, there is going to be a designated a paved area, I think, near McDonald's, but in this case, I don't see any reason to stop people parking the road. What I don't want is people in that immediate vicinity, large numbers of drivers staying there for considerable time, smoking, making noise, revving up their engines. That's what's causing the problems in Ashwin Street.
But surely we're talking about sorry, if I've understood the geography correctly, the immediate pavement outside is a bus lane and is essentially Kingsland Road, where there's no parking of any sort that's allowed. It's a red route. And we're talking then about round the corner in Stamford Street, where they currently park. Is that right?
Sorry, I'm just suggesting long-term parking. I don't think this is too difficult to resolve. I think the pavement there, I mean, there's various fairly wide pavements there. I just want to get rid of long-term parking by the premises.
Okay. Councillor Bell.
Sorry.
I think both of you have already articulated the main issue here. You're in a commitment impact zone because it's already having problems from delivery drivers and other kinds of nuisance. And the problem with the condition Councillor Snell is suggesting is enforceability. How you actually enforce anything on your delivery drivers who don't work directly for you. And my fear is whatever conditions we put in here, delivery drivers would simply ignore them and mount the pavement when they're on their cycles. And I struggle to find a way to get around that. And although this business by itself seems small, and from what I hear seems reasonable, the problem is that it will still add cumulative impact in an area already suffering. So that's my problem with this. I'm not sure the Bentley Road option would really work because, as I said, if you don't employ them directly, then you really can't enforce against them. So that's my concern still.
So at this point, then, I think we probably need to throw it back to the applicant to say, is there anything that you can say to us now that you could implement with both your own delivery drivers, if you have them, but more particularly with the visiting ones, that would avoid what Councillor Bell has just outlined? I've sort of thrown it back to you, the applicants, to respond to what Councillor Bell has said, really, because at the moment it feels like we're not really hearing anything which is going to resolve this problem.
Councillor Rod, my question to Ahmed, if he could just state what proportion of his activities contains food deliveries and delivery platforms, and what time he stops that. If you can answer this, please.
The proportion is proportion of the orders of those platforms, 5% to 10% a month.
What time do you stop delivery?
10:30 every day.
And most of these deliveries you do yourself. And how much of those goes to delivery platforms?
So I can say Just Eat 10%, Uber Eats 10%, Just Eat 10%, and 70% on our own app.
Okay, so you're saying about, so this has changed now. You're now saying about 70% on your own app and about 30% coming in from other externals, yeah?
Yes, but it may change on some days.
I understand, but you did originally say 90% was from your own.
Councillor Trott, 90% of the turnover comes from takeaways, only
Yes,
10% from deliveries.
Okay.
And 10% of that delivery, 70%, they do it themselves. Only 30% comes from delivery platforms. I just want to make it clear.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
So primarily then, let's just be absolutely clear about this. What you're saying is that most people, most of your customers come in and collect their own food that they then take away. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it's correct.
Okay. Now we've already heard that they don't stand around outside eating it. They tend to take it home to eat. Is that correct?
That's correct, because as Hayrola said, people can't eat it just standing on the streets, because as it mentioned already, both hands has to be used to eat it. And also it's very, sticky, as Hayrola said, and you wanted to wash your hands after every bite, so it can't be eaten on the streets easily.
Okay. So from the point of view of litter, which was one of Mr. Riviere's other concerns, you don't see that you've got a particular problem because people take your food away from the shop. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Could you repeat that for me?
From the point of view of litter, because Mr. Riviere pointed out a number of different problems. Deliveries, noise, litter was another one. And what you're saying means that you don't think that there is a significant litter problem because people don't stand around and eat your food. Is that right?
Yes, right.
Okay. Mr. Burke-Bernard?
There is a litter provided within the premises. Also, there is a public litter just by the bus stop. So they both can be used. I mean, not many people use the outside one. If they eat inside, they use the inside bin. But I haven't seen anyone. But there's a public litter just by the bus stop as well. There isn't any issues being reported so far.
Okay. I'm just going to throw the question back to Mr. Riviere for a moment and say, from what we've heard so far, Mr. Riviere, is there any kind of condition that you can think of here that would reassure you with regard to the takeaway aspect of this?
Well, it depends, Chair, what kind of restrictions they were prepared to put on their takeaways, for example. So if their takeaways, for example, meant that no one should congregate outside the premises, and they, all those takeaways should be taken away from the premises to be eaten, then that might, go some way to resolve any issues about people congregating outside the premises in terms of patrons. Bearing in mind that they're also applying for off sales of alcohol in the cumulative impact area, then if the alcohol sales as well for off sales were restricted to be consumed away from the premises, so that people would take it home ideally to consume it, then that would go some way as well to resolve some of our concerns. But if people, for example, buy a small snack, buy some alcohol, then are hanging around the cumulative impact area, then that can lead to some of the negative impact that we've discussed already.
So I wonder then whether or not the applicant feels that they could submit to a condition which said that there should be nobody congregating outside to consume the takeaway food that's bought. Mr. Burke-Bernard?
This food is very delicate and it's a seafood. It has to be kept at the right temperature throughout. I mean, people have this food. I mean, obviously it's new to UK. Mr. Zotkaci is the first investor who invested in such food. And it needs to be consumed within an hour or so, because once it reaches the 8 Celsius, it starts multiplying bacteria and it can be poisonous. So whoever purchases this food needs to consume it within an hour. So I don't think anyone will be congregate and outside hanging around with the food that's very delicate. And I mean, there'll be measures in place to make sure that such thing won't happen, especially when on the closure.
Can I just interrupt you for a minute, because to some extent, what you're saying could be seen the other way as well. What you're saying is that food has to be eaten quickly, otherwise it's not good and it's not good for you. To my mind, that might imply that people will be more likely to stand around and eat it outside. So I don't quite follow the reasoning that you're going with there. Can I just take comments from Amanda and Councillor Snell, please?
Yes, I was just going to ask whether the licensing officer felt condition 18 covered some of the concerns.
If we could have a look at condition 18, which is all off sales of alcohol should be sealed containers for consumption away from the premises and ancillary to a takeaway meal. Mr. Riviere, what's your view?
So yeah,
on
that does deal with some of the concerns around alcohol. Yeah, I suppose it does deal with it to a certain degree. It's just if people are congregating as well outside, then that may be a separate issue. So if, for example, they were to propose that no patrons would be in the external areas of the premises, and they'll be moved on after they've made their purchase, then that might go some way as well to relieve some of the impact on the cumulative in the area that it's in.
Also, just to ask quickly, is how many staff do they have, and therefore will they have enough staff to manage the door area and the external?
Okay, so that's a question to you, Mr. Zokkachi. How many staff do you have? Do you have enough staff to both do the cooking and the serving and manage the door, make sure that people aren't congregating outside, and indeed, as you say, do the deliveries too?
We have 6 staff at the moment. We have enough staff to cook, serve, and manage the door.
Okay, Councillor Snell.
But
Thank you. Have you finished, Mr. Ahmed?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so I think we need to get something across now. We have to take your application as from you, but if we grant an additional license in this area, we don't know that it's just going to be you runs it in the future. So what we've got to do is future-proof it. If we decide that we're going to give you a license, we can put on it conditions that meet your needs, but that stop this being abused by someone in the future who basically wants to set up a bar and have people spilling out in the street. Now, as far as I'm concerned, we will retire shortly. Yes, the 3 of us will go away and make our decision on exactly what the consensus is. But I will tell you where I am coming from now, and you can respond to this in your summing up. Basically, this is a special policy area with a known problem with delivery drivers and a known problem with people spilling out onto the street. Therefore, I will not be voting in favour of granting this licence without the conditions involved. Number 1, limiting the number of people who are outside, placing a duty on you to limit the number of people outside. And secondly, saying that all deliveries must be made by the business itself. It's a minor part of your business, but that doesn't seem to me an unwarranted requirement, because giving a license in an SPA is a big issue, and we have to be able to demonstrate to the people of de Beauvoir that actually we are taking their interests seriously. So I'm just throwing that into discussion. You don't have to come back to me now. Just address that in your summing up if you do feel that those conditions are unfair. But I see no reason we shouldn't impose those conditions if we do approve this license.
And Mr. Riviere?
Chair, I just wanted to add the issue of recorded music on the license. So I know Mr. Burke-Pinar said earlier that it would only be background music, but if it was only background music, then essentially it wouldn't be a licensable activity. So I'm just wondering that if the music is going to be at such a level that it will be background, then is recorded music actually required for the license?
Can I just check that with Amanda? Amanda, what's your view on that?
Well, it depends on how they were going to be operating, because they are closing at they're operating within core hours, so it's likely that it's not going to be a regulated activity before 11.
So what we need to do then is to clarify a couple of things, I think, with Mrs. Zokkachi and Mr. Burke-Pinar. First of all, I want to be absolutely clear that you are happy to operate within core hours. And that includes the Sunday, which at the moment means reducing by half an hour. Is that okay? Yeah? Can I have a yes to that, please?
Let me get yes from Mr. Ahmed.
Yes, we are happy. We are happy.
Good, thank you. So the second thing then is to point out that if you are operating within core hours, for background music, you don't need a recorded music license. So would you like to withdraw that element from this application?
As long as we don't break the law, I mean, the music they were playing, not danceable music or entertainment type of music, just, dim side, just something they can hear. It's not very loud or ear-bashing music.
That's fine. I mean, basically, as long as you are having background recorded music within the core hours, you won't be breaking the law.
Okay,
You
that's
would be breaking the law if you turned the music up so loud that it started to become something else.
no.
And for that, you would need a license. But if it's a way of us knowing that you will be keeping it to background noise only. Do you understand?
Yes,
So can we remove that element from the license application?
yes. I think they should be fine.
Yes? Good. Okay. So that's clarified things a little bit. I think, you know, we need to take seriously the other issues that Councillor Snell has raised. And in your summing up, which I think we can move to in now, really, I'd like you to address the issue that has been suggested, really, which is that we do need you to take on board that you are going to have to ensure that there are no people outside your premises consuming your what you've sold to them. And we are going to ask you to, we are likely to ask you to ensure that all deliveries are made by yourselves, which, given what you've pointed out in terms of the amount of business which is delivered at the moment, should not impact too severely on your business. If you can sum up where you see things at the moment and take into account those two things, that would be useful, please.
Is that question to me?
Sorry, I think I'm just checking now because I think I may have gone in the wrong way. I think I should have asked Mr. Riviere to sum up first. Is that right? And then to ask the applicant to sum up. Yeah. Amanda?
Chair, I was just thinking, given the points you're asking them to consider, do you think that the applicant needs 5 minutes with his agent to discuss it, so that they can, you know, rather than just individually, just randomly saying things and they're not sure? I'm just sort of thinking, you know, to be fair to them, that's all. They haven't had enough time to think about it.
That's certainly something that we can offer you if you'd like to just take 5 minutes out of the meeting to have a conversation between the two of you. Would you like that?
Yes, please.
Okay. In that case, it's 15:04. Shall we all just take a short comfort break and say we'll be back at, let's say, 15. Is 15:10 going to be enough time? Yeah?
Yeah.
Good. All right. See you in 6 minutes, everybody. Thank you. And Amanda, can I just check? I do have to ask Channing to sum up first, don't I? Here we are again.
Hi there. Did we cover all the legal stuff we needed, Amanda? I was racking my brains to think if we'd missed anything, but I don't think we did.
No, I mean, the only question I was going to ask the licensing for the licensing officer is whether or not we should ask for the fire risk assessment or not, whether it's necessary. I don't know.
One issue that I was not sure about was about the planning, since they're already operating this business, presumably not selling alcohol. Do they have planning permission for it? Is that a significant issue?
I would have thought they would have. There's been no issue raised about it, so because normally licensing would raise an issue.
They would check that.
LP5, if there was a concern about that, they would have raised it in their representation.
Okay.
If there was a concern about planning for this premises.
I'm just aware that it hasn't had a license before, as I understand it, and so I don't know what it was used for before.
I don't know, if the licensing officer, Suba, if you're able to help with anything about what it was used for before or not, or you don't have that information really.
Good. Thank you. I think everybody's back again now. Thank you very much. So Mario, I think we can go ahead again if you haven't already. So you've had a conversation, Mr. Burke-Pinar and Mr. Zokkachi. At this point then, I think we've discussed quite fully what the problems and the issues are from the licensing committee point of view. I wonder if you could sum up your application and where you stand on it at the moment, please.
I have spoken to Mr. Zokkachi, the applicant, and if the application granted, they are prepared to comply with all the conditions that submit imposed, whether mandatory or recommendation-wise. And in terms of delivery platforms, if it's possible, they would like to keep that option open for themselves. And they've been operating the last 5 months, and they have enough measures to make sure that they manage it properly. They haven't had any issues so far, and they intend to keep it that way. If there is any recommendations to make sure that they improve this activity, and they are open to suggestions, and they are willing to, he's willing to work with the delivery platforms as well. Even though it's a small proportion, it's an extra income for the business.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions or anything else from the councillors? No?
Sorry, Chair, can I just be clear? Is that will not accept the condition not to use the other delivery systems?
They want to keep it open. They want to keep their options open. Yeah.
I think, as I understood it, what you've said is that if we impose that condition, you will live with it, but you would still prefer not to have it. Is that correct?
Councillor Trott, I mean, they do rely on even the small income from there. It'll be extra income for the business. If they not to use these platforms, they maybe end up make someone redundant or ask them to get their other job.
Can I suggest we just move to summing up? Because we haven't heard from Mr. Riviere, and then we let the applicant cover anything that they feel they need to tell us before we make a decision.
Okay, Mr. Riviere.
Hi, Chair. So given what's been discussed, I mean, it does seem like a pretty modest application, but some issues still remain due to the fact that it's in the special policy area. So notably, one of these we've just discussed, which is that of delivery drivers and the restrictions around delivery drivers. So, I mean, from my point of view, given that the premises has already been operating with predominantly its own delivery drivers, if the committee were minded to grant the license, I would suggest that what has been proposed in the restriction of only using their own delivery drivers, that should be part of the license. And if the applicant at a certain time wishes to amend that, then they can do so via a variation application, should the committee be minded to grant the license. There should be some restriction on the congregation outside of the premises, whether it's this limited number of patrons or no patrons. And I mean, a lot of the other conditions that have been proposed and discussed are to sort of my satisfaction. What remains is the discretion of the committee to decide if it's appropriate to grant the license within the cumulative impact area. Nothing further to add, Chair.
Thank you very much. If I could therefore ask the applicant, please, to sum up from their point of view how they want to leave things with us as we go away to discuss whether or not to grant this license application.
Ahmed.
Yes. I didn't get the question, to be honest. Could you?
The question really is, and it may be Ahmed, it might be Mr. Berkmanar who does the summing up. What we'd like you to do is to round up for us how you see your application at this point. If you're willing to make concessions, and if so, what those concessions might be, in the light of the conversations that we've had today and us outlining our reservations about some aspects of the business that you want to run.
I think Mr. Berkmanar would answer better.
Okay.
I'd like to answer comments of Mr. Riviera. The delivery is only 10% of the turnover, and the 30% of that comes from delivery platforms, and majority of them is about by the bikes. So they haven't had any issues so far. Obviously, if you have any suggestions to keep this that way, we are open to suggestions. They've been operating complying with everything. I would like you to review your decision on this because, as I said, if they stop working with these delivery platforms, they're going to end up sucking someone from their work. Someone's going to lose their job because of this thing. I don't think no one wants this at this stage. I think, as you mentioned, it's a modest application, and we will do everything in our power to make sure that all the objectives have been complied with. And I have provided the training manuals for them, age verification policy, all the relevant signs, and we'll make sure that everything's complied with. And I mean, we are open to suggestions to make sure that if we can improve in areas, more than welcome. I mean, to do make suggestions, we can we'll talk about it. But, I mean, at this stage, I will recommend that you review your decision on about delivery platforms.
Mr. Riviere?
Chair, just in response to Mr. Berkmanar, so while we are sympathetic to your concerns, I'm afraid that pecuniary interests are not for consideration by a licensing committee. We can only consider the application based on the licensing objectives and the promotion of the licensing objectives. And in this case, I do feel that what has been proposed in the delivery condition would be appropriate in this case. So while I understand what you're saying about the impact it may or may not have on the business, with regards to the licensing objectives, I do feel that right now, from what I've seen and what's been discussed, that would be the best way forward at this point in time with regards to the license.
And Councillor Bell?
I was going to suggest as part of the negotiations with the police, they suggested a condition saying no more than 2 smokers outside. Now, I'm sure they were trying to be helpful, but that may in fact contradict what we want. Ideally, we want no one loitering outside. And so it would seem counterintuitive to have a condition allowing for 2 people to loiter outside. So I'm wondering, given the fact you know, clearly your customers shouldn't be there long enough, you're telling us to want to smoke, should we need that condition at all?
That's a good question, and I was thinking something a bit similar actually during the break, and I think it's something that we do need to raise, because if we want to remove that, we could change the condition to have nobody to be outside, including smokers, which would probably be the most likely way that we want to go on this. I wonder if we could ask Mr. Berkman. Councillor Snell, you wanted to say something?
I did raise this earlier. I mean, I would make it quite clear, when we retire for private discussion, there is no way that I'm going to be in favour of granting this licence if people hang around outside. Some control over the number of people waiting. I personally think it would be unrealistic to say nobody can ever be queuing outside. But the reference to smokers is not really relevant to this application. So I would be suggesting we replace that with a limit of 4 people queuing, something along those lines. But we can discuss that in private session.
All right. I think also we should just say that the fire risk, which was just something that we discussed right at the beginning of this session, the fire risk assessment, I think we will probably also make that a condition of the license as well, that should happen. I think it's important that it should. So, Mr. Burke-Pinar, it's been explained to you that actually the business of whether or not somebody has to be made redundant or not as a result of restrictions on delivery is not a material consideration for the committee, really. And I would just point out, from the figures that you've given us, you're talking about something which is between a 3 and 4% impact on the business as it stands at the moment. So this it doesn't seem to me a make or break for a business, 3 or 4% impact. And I think I should point out that the most likely outcome at the moment is that we will come back to you with additional conditions, and conditions that we have discussed with you in the course of this, but which sadly we haven't been able to reach complete agreement with you on, just so that you're aware of where things are likely to go later on. And as it is, I think we'd probably draw this element of the meeting to a close, and we'll go into have our own discussions and deliberations now, and come back to you tomorrow with an initial result, and within a week to give you the chapter and verse formally. Okay, good. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Mr. Burke-Pinar and Mr. Zokkachi, and you'll hear from us in due course.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye,
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.